Hello, everybody. Welcome to another webinar with Lightning Tools. My name is Brett Lonsdale, and I'm excited to demonstrate to you the new version of the Lightning Conductor today. So, first of all, welcome to the event. I hope you all learn a lot about the Lightning Conductor, whether you're new to the Lightning Conductor or an existing customer. Hopefully, be able to learn some new things today that you can apply with inside your organization. So, first of all, just want to give a bit of background as to who we are at Lightning Tools. So we're a company, we're based in the UK. We also have a US subsidiary as well of Lightning Tools LLC, and we provide a number of different products for Microsoft SharePoint and have been doing so for the past 15 years. And we've also adapted those to work inside of course, SharePoint Online and also Microsoft Teams as well. So the products that we provide include the Lightning Conductor, which of course we're going to be taking a look at today, and that's our content aggregation tool. We also have other products such as permissions management and discussion boards, also some data integration and data visualization, SharePoint list form design, and also action builders and document generators that accompany the list form designer. So this is our portfolio products. They're all available independently, but they can also be purchased as part of a suite as well. So you can find out more about our suites of tools on the lightningtools.com website. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is the Lightning Conductor, as I've already mentioned. And for those of you that are new to the Lightning Conductor, if this is the first time you're seeing it, we'll just give a quick intro as to what the Lightning Conductor is. There's going to be a few demonstrations on the types of things that we can use the Lightning Conductor for. And hopefully throughout that, even if you're already a user of the Lightning Conductor, you'll pick up some of the new things that we're going to be demonstrating. And then later on, I'm going to show you something that is quite a new or very new major feature that we've added into the Lightning Conductor, and that's the ability to work with adaptive cards, which you'll see as we go through. So first of all, just to address what the Lightning Conductor is, the Lightning Conductor is a SharePoint list roll-up tool traditionally. Sometimes people will refer to that either as a roll-up tool or as a content aggregation tool. Really, that has the same meaning. And historically, all the way back to 2007, when the Lightning Conductor was first created, it solved a very simple issue, and that was using out-of-the-box web parts in SharePoint 2007. At the time, you couldn't aggregate SharePoint lists and libraries from across different site collections. So that was the issue that we were addressing back then. But as time has evolved, we've ended up with a product that is still capable of aggregating SharePoint lists and libraries, not just from different site collections, but also from, of course, the new modern hub sites and associated sites. But we've extended it to go beyond just SharePoint lists and libraries as well. So not only are we building views of our task lists and announcements and events and things like that that we've always done, but also we're able to hook into things like SharePoint search results, so we can bring in content through the indexed cache, if you like. We can also bring in content from Microsoft Graph entities such as OneDrive and Teams, or even Microsoft To Do and Microsoft Planner and so on. And we have also last year extended the capability to Microsoft 365 groups. So of course, we're not just creating SharePoint sites by going into SharePoint and building different sites within inside of our site collections, but we're actually getting sites through the creation of a Microsoft 365 group as well, which is something you may create through Microsoft Outlook or something like that, or also through Microsoft Teams. And they also, of course, contain things like planner plans that are associated with them, as well as traditional document libraries and calendars and events and so on. So using the Lightning Conductor, we can actually build a view of that content and easily select it based on Microsoft 365 groups, and not just actually browsing different site collections in order to get to the content. So there's lots of things that we can aggregate. You can then build a view of that content in multiple different ways. And we're going to talk about what those different ways are. But the whole idea is that we build a view that not just displays that content, but displays that content in a way that we can very easily see what's important to us as a business user. So if we're aggregating tasks, of course, tasks that are becoming overdue or are high priority, that's important to me. I want those to stand out and not just be standard text on a screen. So we can use conditional formatting to make that content stand out. We can also use grouping. We can create calculated columns and things like that using the inbuilt grid view. But there's also different ways of displaying data as well. So if we're aggregating from calendars, for example, we may not actually want to show that in a column and row format that the grid view offers. We may want to show that inside an actual calendar. We can show tasks inside of calendars as well, or we could show tasks inside of Gantt views. We can even have documents show up in tile views. So through the use of some built-in templates that are based on either XSLT or JSON, we can, or you can use those readily available templates, or you can actually build your own as well. So if you have some developers in-house, or you're a developer yourself, you can build your own JSON view, or even customize some of the examples that we provide. So the whole purpose of the Lightning Conductor is to save end users lots of different time, or lots of time when looking for content. So of course, traditionally we would go and navigate to different SharePoint sites, or navigate to different SharePoint site collections, looking at different lists and libraries to see maybe if tasks have been created and assigned to us, or if documents have been updated recently, that type of thing. And the same applies to Microsoft Teams now as well. We have lots of different teams, lots of different channels. Files are being created in there, as with channel calendar events and things like that, which would be useful if we didn't have to navigate to each of those individual teams and each of those different channels, if we could just see that information in one place. And that's exactly what we can use the Lightning Conductor for. So it saves you a great deal of time when you're looking for content, and it saves developers time in actually building these aggregated views. So of course, without something like the Lightning Conductor, would be actually building some JSON and so on, using something like the highlighted content web part. So what can be aggregated? So as I mentioned, SharePoint lists and libraries, we can include SharePoint list and library content from a single list or a single library if you wanted to just simply duplicate that in a different site. So things like a contact list is useful to show in another place. We work not just with the classic lists and libraries, but some of the new modern Microsoft lists as well. So you'll be able to use those, things like the the brand new Microsoft lists that you have available inside of SharePoint. You can also aggregate from that content too. And it doesn't have to just reside inside one site, but multiple sites. So we could bring in task lists from many different sites, or document libraries from many different sites, and display that content in a way that we want to see it. So that can be done either using the client-side object model, in which case we're getting real-time results. So if somebody was to update a task, we'd see that immediately using the Lightning Conductor. Or we could also use search, which is useful if we're aggregating vast amounts of content, because that content is already going to be cached by the SharePoint search indexer. So we're simply going to be displaying it, and therefore we can display thousands or tens of thousands of documents from the search index in a paginated view, and be able to display that content pretty quickly. Okay, so that's the sort of thing that we can do with the Lightning Conductor. We can also, as I mentioned, get at other entities as well. So it's not just SharePoint content, but things like the Microsoft Graph entities as well. So OneDrive files is an example, or planner plans. And building these as separate views inside the same web part instance is really powerful. So you could bring in tasks from SharePoint in one view, and we could have another view for tasks that are assigned to you inside of Planner or Microsoft To Do as well, using the Microsoft Graph. And as I mentioned, navigating that same sort of content through Microsoft 365 groups is also possible. So when you go to view the content, there's different ways of doing it. The grid view is the sort of default option, if you will. So we can use the grid view in order to be able to select different select different columns from the data source. So these will be your SharePoint list columns. So from task lists, for example, we could bring in things like the task name, the start date, the due date, the status, the priority. These can be things that we can display, and then you can add things like conditional formatting and grouping and calculated columns in order to make that content really stand out. And again, you could have multiple views inside that same web part, not just for the different data sources, as I mentioned, but also variations of the same data source. So if I had the Lightning Conductor, I might have one view that shows all of the tasks. We could have another view that shows just my tasks, and another view that shows my overdue tasks. And likewise with document libraries based on custom content, and metadata as well. So beyond the grid view, we've also got the JSON views. So there's some built-in templates that you'll be able to view. These include things like the calendar view, the Gantt view. There's also some task views and event views that you can use inside the Lightning Conductor as well. These are built-in templates that don't require any code, but if you want to, you can extend them with code. So you can extend them with some JSON or build your own from scratch entirely. The XSLT is really for sort of backwards compatibility. If you're going to build a new view today, use JSON, not XSLT, but they are there if you are using some classic lists and libraries and you wanted to make use of the XSLT views, you can also do that. And then, again, there's things like the classic calendar views and things like this that are available to you. And then brand new is the adaptive cards. And we're going to be talking about that. So adaptive cards is something that was announced in 2019 by Microsoft at the Microsoft Build conference. And it's something that is used today inside of Teams, inside of Power Automate and Outlook in order to display data, but also allow data inputs as well. And the Lightning Conductor has become another host of that. So you can actually build an adaptive card for your SharePoint list content or your Microsoft Graph content in a way that it can be displayed inside of modern SharePoint or inside of Microsoft Teams, and more of that as we go on. So everything you're going to see from every demo that I do inside of SharePoint here, you can do exactly the same thing in Teams. And that's more important today because a lot of people are actually working in Teams more than they're working in SharePoint. With Teams, you can add a Teams tab and you can configure the Lightning Conductor there and do everything in it that you can do inside of SharePoint as well, and vice versa. And of course, it's going to adapt to the different display modes that you might have inside of Teams. So things like the dark mode, the light mode, and inside of SharePoint, the same thing with themes that you can apply to your site. So let's jump in and take a look at it. What we're going to do here is just bring up my SharePoint site, and we're going to navigate first of all into my Sales Hub, where we will create a new page. So in here, we're going to add a page, and we're going to call this the Lightning Conductor webinar. Okay, and of course I can go in and drop in a web part. So we'll select the Lightning Conductor, and if you're new to the Lightning Conductor, as I mentioned, the first thing you're going to notice is there's a button right in the middle, and that's configure, and that's the first thing that we're going to click. And the Lightning Conductor offers two different ways of configuring it. You've got the quick configuration where we can do most things, but if you want to jump into the advanced mode, that's the most granular place. You can sort of set every single detail of what you're trying to build. So I'm just going to show you a few different quick configurations, and then we'll jump into the advanced mode. So apologies for anybody that's seen this before. I'm just going to go through this quite quickly though. We're going to bring in some tasks, and when I'm choosing tasks, this is SharePoint task lists. I can choose what tasks I'm going to bring in, and these are just some sort of built-in filters that we've got in place, so we can bring in all of the tasks. In other words, I'm not going to apply a filter, and we then get to specify where that content is going to come from. So this can be from Hub site and the associated sites. It can also come from different site collections, and we can do that using search or real time, as I mentioned. We can even bring back the content from the entire tenant if we want to. And quite a common question that we get asked is that content security trimmed? Yes, it is. You're not going to see any content here that you wouldn't already have access to. Okay, so when we're configuring that, we're bringing in tasks from the current site and any associated sites. And in here, we've got the grid view, which we've talked about. We've also got the calendar view, which is a JSON view that would be applicable to tasks. And you've also got this exciting new cards over on the right-hand side, which I'll show you shortly. We introduced, I think it was the beginning of last year, the ability to also show person avatars as well. So this is our first view that we're going to be building, and as you can see, we've got some tasks coming in. We've got the task name, who it's assigned to, the task status with some conditional formatting going on. We have the priority, the due date, and so on. And this is highly flexible. I'm still in the edit mode, which means I can add additional columns if I want to. So notice how we've got all of the columns that are related to the tasks I'm aggregating available to me on the right-hand side here. So if we wanted to drop in something like the start date, we could do that. And if we wanted to format the start date so that we had some conditional formatting, we could do that too. Or we can also go in to the data formatting, and we could set that to be a short date and set all of these other different data formats as well if we want to. Of course, one of the things that the new modern SharePoint lists also provide is custom formatting, and you can mirror that inside the Lightning Conductor as well by copying and pasting that JSON directly into this JSON format from your SharePoint list. So that way your Lightning Conductor has the exact same look and feel as the lists that you're aggregating from as well. Okay, so there's my my start date. You can, as I mentioned, do things like grouping. So this is grouping by the priority. And just to show you here, we've also got the conditional formatting set as well. So we could change this if we wanted to, but this is one that's already configured for me. So you can see that we're applying certain colors if the tasks are in progress or if they're completed or not started, and so on. And you can use icons for that, or you can use foreground colors and background colors and so on. So that's our first view. And you can, as I mentioned, have multiple different views inside the same web part instance. So this is tasks. We could bring in documents in the same way. So if we go through and configure that, because I'm bringing in documents, this can be displayed inside the grid view as well, or it can also have a tile view, depending on what you want to achieve there. So, so there's the two different views that we've got available inside this particular instance. Okay, so that's just simply using the tasks and documents. I see there is a question from Marianne. Marianne, I'll get back to you very, very shortly. So there's the two views that I've created so far. And these are using the quick configuration and against SharePoint lists and libraries. So what I'm going to do now is just show you how we can also use the graph. And in fact, in answer to your question, you could use this in SharePoint 2019 so far for the tasks and for the document libraries. Of course, you don't have Microsoft Graph in SharePoint 2019, so this bit you wouldn't be able to do. But what I'm going to do here is, in fact, sorry, stay in the quick configuration, and I'm going to choose Microsoft Planner Plans using Microsoft Graph, and we'll start looking at some of these JSON views. So here's the task view, and I'm going to select that. So now you'll see I've got tasks coming in from SharePoint lists, but as I hit the drop down, I can also choose Planner, and this is showing my Planner plans that I have access to. And at the very top here is where I can choose those Planner plans and see what tasks are inside those plans. So we can also see whether they're completed or not, which most of these are. We can reassign these if we want to different people using the Lightning Conductor. So simply we've got that sort of type ahead where we can go through and choose a user. And we can also go through and delete tasks and that type of thing as well. No, of course, you need to have the right permissions in order to be able to do that. So that's working with one of the different graph entities. Let's go in and add one more. So this will be using Microsoft to-do lists. So that also can use the task view, and let's just label that to Microsoft To-do. And so now you can see that we've got to-do on the menu here, and very, very similar because it's the same JSON view. I can actually select my different to-do lists and see the tasks associated to me in each of those Microsoft to-do lists. Okay, so that's all using the quick configuration. And what we'll do now is just jump into some more advanced configurations. Everything that you're about to see, you can also still do inside of SharePoint, but I'm just going to mix it up a little bit by jumping into Microsoft Teams here as well. Before I do, one thing I might want to do is actually export all of the views that I've just created and bring them into the team that represents that SharePoint site. So in here, I can go through and add the Lightning Conductor to my Microsoft team as a tab, and we'll just save that. And what we're going to do, rather than configure this again, which I could do, I'm just going to import what I've already done. just now. So once I hit import, notice we've got those same views coming through. So I've got the tasks, the documents. I also have my planner plans and also Microsoft To Do, all inside of Microsoft Teams, where I'm going to be joining meetings all day. But what we can also do is, like I say, build some more views inside of here too. And we can actually resolve some very sort of specific Microsoft Teams challenges with this also. And what I'm going to do is show the Teams channel calendars. And what you'll notice is I've actually got the channel calendar app. This is the standard Microsoft one that has been added to this team. But every single channel in every team has its own calendar for creating meetings and so on inside those different channels. So what I want to do is have an aggregated view of those channel calendars for those teams or channels that I really care about. So what I'm going to do here is just go through and configure that one. And I'm going to do it using the advanced mode here. So inside the advanced mode, this is where we can select the different types of role-up provider. So here we're using the search, as I mentioned, we're using the object model, the graph, or the Microsoft 365 group provider. And each one, the data source tab will change, of course. So if I go to the data source tab for search, here I'm going to go through and configure a search query. So just to give an example of that, I might want to bring back everything that is a particular content type or a specific content type. So I could go through and say, yeah, the content type is a document. If I select document in here, we could then choose what scope that is. So what site collections is it coming from? And then we could go through and build our view by selecting the different columns and so on. I'm just going to change that now to the object model. And when we're using the object model, the data source tab changes again. So this is now actually allowing me to navigate through my different sites or my different site collections or even my lists, depending on how granular we want to get. And we can go through and select the different sites that we want to aggregate from, and then specify the type of list that we're going to, or list or library that we're going to be aggregating. So again, if I wanted to bring back documents, we would just simply go through and select the document library template in here. And once more, select our columns and so on and so forth. There's the graph. So if we're using the graph, now the data source tab is different again. It's allowing me to actually go through and choose one of those different graph entities. So this is where I could choose the planner plan as an example. And in here, we could build my graph query. And we've predefined some of those. So notice there's predefined or custom. So here's a user planner plans, and we can specify who that user is and so on. And that's what you need to do. And once again, you get the columns available to build a view for that particular graph entity. So we're going to take a look at this one, which is the Microsoft 365 group roll-up provider. And I'm going to change it from a grid view to the JSON view. And under the data source tab, notice here that it's showing me different Microsoft 365 groups, but I can also change that to teams. So under teams, I'm going to choose the sales team, which is the one that I'm in. And if I spent most of my time in sales and marketing, I might want to aggregate the calendars or the events from sales, but also from marketing as well. So as we come down here, there's the marketing team. And just like the graph, because it is using graph, I can specify what it is I want to see from those teams. So in here, we've got things like the files, which is the drive items. I've got SharePoint lists and libraries. I can have members view and owners view, the plans, etc. But what I'm going to be concerned with is the events. So I'm just going to go through and choose events inside that particular instance. And from the columns now, I can go through and choose the columns that I want to have available inside my view. But since I'm using a built-in JSON template, I don't need to do that. I'm just going to use this built-in template here, which is the Lightning Tools Outlook Events Agenda. And notice that when I save that now and select that view, so there's our team channel calendars, I can actually see all of the events that are coming from each of those different channels inside one view. So you can see here that yeah, some are coming in from sales, some are coming in from marketing, and so on. Okay, so that's the type of thing that you can do with the Lightning Conductor. And what we'll do is have a look now at what's brand new inside of this release. And inside this release, we've now got this ability to work with the adaptive cards. I see there is a question which I will answer now. So the question is, can we add shared Outlook calendars as overlays to the channel calendars? So yeah, inside of SharePoint, you have what's known as a calendar overlay, and that's something that you can combine up to 10 SharePoint event lists calendars into one view. They all have to be inside the same site collection, etc. But basically, with the Lightning Conductor, you could aggregate as many calendar lists as you want from SharePoint into one calendar. But if it's Outlook calendars, depends what type of Outlook calendar, you can get to personal events through the graph. You can also get to the Microsoft 365 group events, as you've just seen, through the graph as well. So yeah, the answer is yes, you can get to all of those calendars and create an aggregated view of that calendar. And there is a built-in calendar JSON view that you can also have applied to that too. All right, so working with adaptive cards. So these adaptive cards, like I say, it's fairly new to Microsoft. It's very new to the Lightning Conductor, and it's a completely different way of working in order to build your own style of view. And those views, what I'm going to do first of all is actually just jump into the adaptive card builder. So just bear with me one moment. So as you'll see here, I'm just going to do a quick Bing search for adaptive cards, and the top result is adaptivecards.io. And this is a Microsoft thing. So in here, it tells you all about adaptive cards and what those adaptive cards are. And as you can see here, you can build adaptive cards and use them in multiple different places, inside of Microsoft Outlook, inside of Microsoft Teams, in web chat, Microsoft Cortana, and timelines. So you can build apps that also surface the different adaptive cards. So as you scroll down through their documentation, or through Microsoft's documentation, you'll see some of the different uses of these adaptive cards and the types of views that you can display using them. So all of that is being served from Microsoft, and what you can do is actually build your own adaptive card view using the adaptive card designer, and that doesn't take much code. There's lots of different samples, but once you've created it, you can go through and apply that to the Lightning Conductor as a different way of viewing your content. Okay, so that's what we're going to take a look at. And as you go through and get started, there's videos on this where you can go through and see it in use. And what I'm going to do is just bring up the adaptive card designer. There we go. And this adaptive card designer, as you can see, it has some sample code so that you can, or sample data rather, so you can go through and see that data inside the card. So you'll notice here that we've got this person here called Matt, and inside the data here, we're going to see there's the value that's being applied to that. So yeah, as we sort of overtype that and save this, it's going to go through and apply that to the card. And then this bit on the left hand side is the payload, the JSON, if you like, for your view, but we don't have to actually go through and create that as you would with a standard JSON file. You can do that using these different controls over on the left hand side to build the view that you want, and you can set all of the different properties and styling over on the right. And like I say, this is not Lightning Conductor specific by any means. This is something that you can go through and do for Microsoft Teams and Power Automate and all sorts of things, including Outlook. And what we're designing here is actually a card that can be used in multiple platforms. So you'll notice in the drop down, we've got things like Microsoft Teams. So there's the Microsoft Teams dark mode, there's the Microsoft Teams light mode. There's also Viva Connections that makes use of adaptive cards. And we can also see Cortana and what it would look like there, and so on. So the whole idea is that you actually build an adaptive card, and you don't really care about where that adaptive card is going to be used. That's down to the host, so that if you use that adaptive card in Teams, it's going to look like Teams. If you used it inside of Viva Connections, it's going to look like Viva Connections, and so on. And of course, the same with the bot framework as well for web chat. And Microsoft has built lots of different examples for you. So when we click onto new card, you'll see in here we've got this one on the left that we were just looking at. And not only is it used for displaying content, but also allowing you to update content as well. So you can input data, such as in here you can see there's a set new date or view. There's another one with snooze or I'll be late to provide some feedback. We've got some flight information here as well. There's image galleries that we can use, weather cards, etc., etc. So we can go through and take some of these different adaptive cards and start to customize them ourselves for our data source. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing using the Lightning Conductor here. Okay, so what I want to do, first of all, is just show you some different built-in versions of the adaptive cards that we've got. Again, using the quick configuration, we've done a lot of this work for you. So in here, I'm going to have tasks displayed. I don't need to call this view adaptive cards, it's just to help me. So we've got a view here called tasks adaptive cards. And when I go to configure it, you don't even have to go into that advanced mode. I can just simply choose tasks from the drop down and select the source again. So it's going to be coming from the current site and any associated sites. And rather than the grid view, I'm going to jump straight to the card view here. So as I hit save and select that view, you'll notice here we've got some adaptive cards. And so these adaptive cards, if we just publish the page actually, rather than staying in edit mode. So in here we've got the adaptive card displayed. So these are aggregated items, and we can go through and view them, which will navigate me to the task itself, or we can also edit them as well. So through the adaptive card itself, I might want to change this in progress task to say completed, and update the start date and the due date, etc., and save that, and notice how that has now been completed, and so on. And you've also got the ability to sort and filter. So in here we can use the filters just like we would do inside the Lightning Conductor anyway. So if I wanted to look for all the completed tasks, we can do that, and that's just brought back the completed ones and ignoring all of the others. Okay, so that's the first adaptive card. Let's just go back into the edit mode, and we'll look at a few more. So in here we'll create another one for events. So let's configure that. And so this time we're going to bring back the events, which is the calendar lists inside of SharePoint, and we'll display those inside an adaptive card as well. So notice as we go through and select that. In fact, sorry, I've only got one event there. Let me change the source for that one. Let's just rename that to events adaptive cards again. There we go. Sorry, I didn't have many events in that hub, so I'm just going to bring these back actually from the current tenant. There we go. So as we choose events, a little bit longer because I'm bringing back content from the current tenant. But as you can see here, we've now got lots of different events. It's showing me the start time and the end time with some different images. We can again go through and view that event, and as we scroll down, you'll see that we've got the pagination going on as well, which you'll have full control of, as you'll see in just a moment. Okay, and again, ability to filter and sort, etc. with that one. And I'm just going to show you one more quick configuration, which is images. So we'll have images and adaptive cards. So we'll choose pictures, I'm going to bring back all pictures again from the current site will do for this one. And we've got the standard sort of gallery view, or there's the picture preview, which is an adaptive card. So in here, we'll go through and select that. So notice here, we've got lots of marketing images coming from a picture gallery inside this, or an image library inside this site. So just in case you've never met any of us, here's me, here's Matt, Sandy, and Jared. Okay, and my daughter, who plays football and is sponsored by Lightning Tools. So lots of different images. We can go through and select those, see the different stands that we've had at different conferences, including this virtual one as well, by just clicking around the images that are being aggregated inside those views. So what if we wanted to get our hands dirty building one of these adaptive cards? Well, let's just have a look at the advanced mode for one of these that I've just selected. So I'm going to go into the tasks one, first of all. So you'll notice here when we're in the advanced mode that we're using the object model to get at the content. We've got the adaptive card display provider as the display provider, and everything else is the same for column selection, etc. But under display, you'll notice in here that we've got the ability to generate that sample data. So if we just go back and forth here between the tab, this is the Microsoft Adaptive Card Designer. This is the sample data that we're talking about, where we had Matt in there. And what I'm going to do is just simply copy our code, or sorry, copy our data. So I can click onto the copy input data there, which is generated by the Lightning Conductor. So in this case, it's just building you one row of data from your aggregated results that you can use inside the Adaptive Card Designer. If you want more than one row, you can set multiple items. But yeah, I just want one row, so I'll copy that one row and drop it here into the sample data. So you notice the sample data is no longer about that guy called Matt. It's about that row that we're returning. But of course, this is a different data source. We've got different fields in here coming from the Lightning Conductor, and not those fields that were set by Microsoft. So what you would do if you wanted to make use of their card rather than start afresh with a blank card, is go through and map each of these to the relevant fields inside the Lightning Conductor. So notice where we've got title, for example, I could map this value here to title. In fact, that one already is. As you can see here, it's mapping it to title there. We can go through and do the same for each of the others, but that's already done by that particular example here. So this is the payload JSON. So if I grab that and drop that into the left-hand side, we've now got everything mapped. So you can see my avatar coming in from Microsoft 365. We've got the account that I'm signed in as, etc. And that is showing that rendered information. And just like you saw before, we can go through and see what that would look like if it was in Teams, if it was in Teams Lite, and if it was in Viva Connections, and so on. And that's exactly what we ended up with inside of SharePoint here. So that's how we can go through and build our own custom view using the Adaptive Card Designer. There's a link out here to the Adaptive Card Designer as well. You can control what columns you want your users to be able to filter or sort by. So you've got a nice little interface here where you can go through and check the columns that you want them to be able to filter or sort by. You can control your pagination for the view and where that pagination control is going to be. And at the bottom here is also your host configuration. So when you're building an adaptive card, to go back to what we said earlier on, you're building a layout essentially with different controls, but the styling of that layout is very much controlled by the host, and that host could be Microsoft Teams, or the host could be Viva Connections, or it could be Outlook, etc. So what we're doing here is controlling what this host is going to apply style-wise to that adaptive card. And you'll notice in here there's lots of different properties because this was created as one of the samples, but you'll you'll see in here, there's things like the background color set, for example. So that background color, we can go through and choose a color, or we can add other properties as well that are used inside that adaptive card. So if we were to choose the choose background color, you'll notice that we've got the container style, and this is quite important. So notice the container style has things like emphasis, accent, good, attention, and warning. If we just jump into the adaptive card for a moment, in fact, just bear with me 1 second. Just grab that again, because that didn't seem to render as I expected it to. Let's put a new card. I think it was getting a bit confused there. There we go. So for each part of the adaptive card, we can go through and choose the binding, but you've also got the ability to set some of the different styles in here as well for each element. So if we go in and take a look at, for example, a text block, you can set the height, the spacing. When it shows, you can bind it to a data source and so on. And likewise for things like the buttons and so on, you can put different types of input text in here as well for your own use. But for each one, you can also specify what style to apply to that control, and also what pattern. I'm not seeing the pattern for some reason. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we should see a pattern there, and that pattern should correspond. For some reason, I'm not seeing it. Apologize. But it should correspond here with the container style. So you can control through the Lightning Conductor what good means, for example. So if you've set inside your adaptive card the container style to be good, then we can go through and apply what good means when it's inside the Lightning Conductor, which might have a different meaning when it's inside of Microsoft Teams and so on. So, so notice here for the background color to be good, it's currently got a blue background, but we could change that to be any other color, including the theme color in that particular instance. Okay, so you've got the that ability for styling. And at the bottom here is also some action handlers. Now, these action handlers are actually the part that's allowing you to update the task in this case. So that is custom code written by us, but there is sample code that you can use in here to update any action. And of course, our tech support team will be able to help you with that if you need to get some help as well. Okay, so so that's how we can go through and build those. Let's just jump into that adaptive card again. So that's our view there. And we'll step back into the PowerPoint for a moment. So here's just an example of an adaptive card being used inside of Outlook. So nothing to do with the Lightning Conductor, but just to give some sort of context as to what we're creating here. Messages such as this one here is coming from Contoso Health, and it's allowing you to book an appointment or reschedule your appointment. So as we hit reschedule inside the message, it would render a form allowing you to specify a date that you want to reschedule to. And all of that is created and served through the adaptive card, and it would take on that Outlook look and feel because that's the intent for it. And there's the other example here of a Teams adaptive card being created inside the adaptive card designer and actually being shown inside of Teams as well. So what we're doing with the Lightning Conductor is also acting as one of those hosts. So you can, as mentioned, build an adaptive card. Using the adaptive card designer, you can customize one of the Microsoft samples or create your own. And this is what I was hoping to show you, was the style attributes here. You can see the color in that case is set to attention, and that is mapping to the attention here inside the screenshot that I provided. So we can control what attention means in terms of the Lightning Conductor versus any other use case where you might use the same adaptive card. Okay, so that's the demo that we did just provide. So yeah, you can build this as a way to display your content now inside of the Lightning Conductor. I see there is a couple of questions, but we'll open it up to more questions in just a moment. There is some resource links. So if you wanted to take a look at the adaptive cards, you can do so here. There's a link to the Microsoft documentation and also to adaptivecards.io, but you'll find those links also inside the Lightning Conductor as well. So when you go into the advanced mode here and click onto the adaptive card designer, you'll be able to, of course, get access to that, and also the documentation is all listed in here, as well as the ability to preview what your card is going to look like, and so on. Okay, so let's open up to some questions. So can I copy and paste the links? Yeah, I'll do that, absolutely. Maybe not from there, just bear with me 1 second whilst I grab that. Okay, so let's just pop these in here. So this is a link out to the documentation for you. There we go. And yeah, there's another question here. Do we have any videos or documentation on setting up calendar views with multiple data sources with different color coding? Let me just show you right now. We probably do have some demos of it, but yeah, it's very quick and easy to demonstrate to you. So let's just go back into SharePoint for a moment, and let's close this down. So let's say I want to work with tasks. So we'll build tasks as a calendar view. So we'll point this to tasks, all tasks from the current hub in the calendar view, and save that. So we now have this this calendar. I need to go back a ways for some content to come through, and you'll actually see some conditional formatting actually already occurring here. This is based on whether the task is overdue or not. But if you go into the advanced properties under the display, is where you can go through and map all the columns for your data source, and also do your conditional formatting. So our conditional formatting is set on the due date, which you can see, but I could also add some other formatting in here that could be set on something like a category column, as you pointed out, or anything else for that matter. And that's determined by the columns that are available in here. So if I wanted to have a category displayed or priority, let's say, so if we choose priority there, add some formatting, I can now choose the priority. So if we said high priority tasks will be a certain color, so maybe let's go with purple just to make it different, and bold, because I don't actually know if there are any high priority tasks, but we should hopefully see some. But that's how we can go through and do that plumbing. Yeah, there we go. We've now got some high priority tasks being shown in here in purple. So you could do that on any form of category column or anything like that if you wanted to. Okay, so yeah, I think that's all the questions in here. So yeah, I just want to say in that case, thank you to everybody for attending. This was recorded, so if you do want to share it or watch it again, you will find it on our website, lightningtools.com, under the webinar tab. So that will be there as soon as we've published that. And of course, if there's any other questions that you might have that you didn't want to ask here, feel free to reach out to our team or reach out to me. So you can reach our team on sales@lightningtools.com or myself on brett@lightningtools.com. But at that point, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day and hopefully see you on our next webinar next month, which will be on the Lightning Form Suite. All right, many thanks.